här och jag är glad. God morgon till er. Du. Jag heter Jan. Jag kommer ifrån Minnesota. Hello, thank you for joining me here. I'm Jan Kittok from Minnesota. I've been a Spanish teacher for 30 years at the elementary school, middle school, high school, and the college level. And since 2000, I've been working with teacher training and as an administrator for part of the time. And since 2000, I've been the World Languages Specialist at the Minnesota Department of Education. So today we're going to be working on content-based instruction and content-based storytelling. During the presentation, there will be 4 different video segments. The first one, it's me talking to a group at a teacher workshop, explaining how I give the class expectations for the process that we use in the language classroom and for the behavior that I expect from them. In the second video, it's a demonstration in Swedish showing how I use comprehensible input strategies to teach vocabulary. The third video is content-based instruction with storytelling. It's a little introduction to the philosophy that I have in the classroom as a teacher for how to integrate language learning and the learning of the target culture at the same time, staying 90% in the target language and being comprehensible and learning culture, all of those happening simultaneously. And that's what we'll see in the last video. The 4th segment is what I call an interactive mini lecture, where I'm going to be teaching you a geography lesson about the Nordic countries and the region of Lapland in Sweden. I'll be doing it in Swedish, 90% in the target language. You're going to learn about geography and you're going to understand it as well. Let's start now with the first video, where I show how I introduce this kind of a language method process to my students along with their expectations for their behavior in the classroom. God morgon klass! God morgon! Välkommen till svenska klass! Jag heter Jan. Välkommen till svenska klass. My expectations for you as a student are to do less. L-E-S-S. I need you to look this way. I need you to listen. Why is that? Your first job as a student is to understand Swedish. That means my first job as a teacher is to make Swedish understandable. And the way I do that, I do a gazillion things to help you understand what I'm saying. A lot of times the cue for what I'm talking about is visual. So you need to be looking this way. It might be something that I'm holding in my hand. It might be an action that I'm doing with my body. It might be an expression on my face that's going to clue you into this is what she's talking about. I might be pointing to an object. That's another visual clue. So I need you to be looking. I need you to be listening, because a lot of times the way that you understand what I'm talking about, the clue for what I'm talking about is something that you hear. Right now, you can hear that I'm making a statement. Can you hear that now I'm asking you a question? That's a big clue for comprehension. Is somebody making a statement, just telling me something? Or is somebody asking me a question? So listen, sometimes you can even tell with my voice. Sometimes you can tell that what I'm talking about is not the very best day in my life. You can tell that I'm talking about something sad. That's a clue to comprehension. Okay, so look and listen. E, enjoy. L-E-S-S, the E stands for enjoy. The more you enjoy, the more you're relaxed, the more you're comfortable, the more you're able to let that language come into your sponge and let you absorb the language. So, enjoy, relax, have fun. LESS. Show me when you get it, show me when you don't. That's really important to me as your teacher, to know if my job is to make Swedish understandable, I need to know, are you understanding? So the way you show me when you get it is you answer my questions. Sometimes it's a ja, nay, a yes or no response. Sometimes it's an Eller response. If I ask you Coke, Eller, Pepsi, what does Eller mean? Or, so you choose the appropriate answer. If it's a who, what, when, where, why question, you answer with the name or the place or the number, whatever it is. So show me when you get it with an action or a verbal response or a choral response in answering the question. So, and every time you hear a question that you can answer, you answer. Sometimes I ask you the same or similar questions over and over again. That's really important to answer every single time, because as your teacher, I'm listening for, does the whole group understand? If I hear 3 or 4 voices, then I know 3 or 4 students are understanding, but I want my whole class to be understanding. So give me that clue. Show me when you get it, and show me when you don't. This is what you do if you don't get it. You give me this little gesture. Let's try it. You can even do the little noise because it's kind of fun. Okay, Jan, that went right over my head. I like to give you a different gesture rather than just raising your hand, because we have years and years of learning that raising your hand means I don't know the answer. Okay, so I want to give you a different gesture, so feel free to use that. Anytime I hear that, I see that. In fact, it's important for you to make the noise, because I might be looking over here, and you're over here going like this, and I don't see you, but I hear a little, then I will know to look over here, and I'll just tell you what it means. Okay, and then we go right on with the lesson. So I expect you to do less, L-E-S-S. Okay, and there are your answers. So that's how I set my students up for success in the classroom, for language acquisition, and how this class is going to run a little bit differently from other classes that they've ever taken. Now we're going to move right into the second video, which is a teaching demonstration. During this video, I invite you to play the role of a student in my classroom and actually answer, do the choral responses that I talked about, and relax, enjoy, have some fun being a student in my classroom virtually. This strategy is called Teacher Talk. It's something that I learned in 1983. This book I carry around with me when I travel and I do teacher workshops, The Natural Approach by Stephen Krashen and Tracy Terrell. I was so fortunate in the 80s where I was teaching. Tracy Terrell was brought in as a speaker for an in-service that we had. Those were my aha moments. I can remember the first aha moment that I had reading this book and reading and highlighting the phrase, comprehension precedes production. Of course it does. It has to. How in the world can you say anything if you don't understand it first? How in the world can you write anything if you don't understand it first? This was my first introduction to comprehensible input. So this strategy, Teacher Talk, for early speech emergence, I've been using throughout my whole career in many different contexts, in many different levels. I'm going to show you the strategy that you can apply to any level that you work with and any language that you work with. I call the activity, What's in the Bag? Vad är det? What is it? In this teaching demonstration, you'll see me do Teacher Talk, where I guide you scaffolded in a very comfortable way so it keeps you at ease and enjoying as you learn to start to say a few things in your new language. Play with Swedish. Have some fun with it. Don't worry about if you pronounce it correctly or if you don't answer every question. Just have some fun and enjoy. Let your brain be a sponge and let the Swedish come in. You'll also see me integrate a few TPR statements. I use TPR beyond just the one-word level that you're familiar with, like run or eat. When you use TPR in a whole statement, the students are also acquiring what every other parts of speech are in that sentence. In this case, it'll be the nouns and the articles that are used there. So let's now go to the second video. Remember, relax, enjoy, let your brain be a sponge, have some fun, and join me with a Swedish lesson. So, you ready? Here we go. You know that it's time for Swedish class when I sing the song. God morgon, vi är här och jag är glad. God morgon till er, du. God morgon, klass! God morgon! Vad är det? Vad är det? Vad? What? What's in the box? Jag vet inte. I don't know. Vad? What? Vad är det? What is it? Ooh! Det är en flagga. Det är en flagga. What does that sound like? Bra! Du är duktig. Ding, 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 ding. So smart. Det är en flagga. Är det en flagga? Ja eller nej? Ja, nej. Är det en flagga? Ja, det är en flagga. Är det en flagga? Nej, det är inte en flagga. Är det en flagga? Ja, det är en flagga. Är det en flagga? Nej, det är inte en flagga. Det är en bok. Det är en bok. Är det en bok? Ja, det är en bok. Det är inte en flagga. Det är en bok. Är det en flagga? Ja, klass, peka på, point to. Peka på en flagga. Peka på en bok. Peka på en flagga och en bok. Bra! Ni är duktiga. Ni är duktiga. Ding, 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 ding. So smart. Okej, en flagga. Det är en flagga. En flagga. Vad är det? Det är en annan flagga. What does that sound like? Det är en annan flagga. Another flag. Bra! Du är duktiga. Ja, duktiga. Ja, du är duktig. Okej, det är en annan flagga. Är det en flagga? Ja, det är en flagga. Är det en bok? Nej, det är inte en bok. Det är en flagga. Är det en flagga eller en bok? Flagga, ja, det är en flagga. Är det en flagga eller en bok? Bok, ja, det är en bok. Det är en flagga. Är det en amerikansk flagga? Nej, det är inte en amerikansk flagga. Det är en svensk flagga. En svensk flagga. Är det en svensk flagga? Ja, det är en svensk flagga. Är det en amerikansk flagga? Nej, det är inte en amerikansk flagga. Det är en svensk flagga. Är det amerikansk eller svensk? Svensk, ja, det är svensk. Det är en svensk flagga. Peka på en amerikansk flagga. Bra, det är en amerikansk flagga. Peka på en svensk flagga. Bra. Peka på en bok. Peka på en bok och en amerikansk flagga. Peka på en svensk flagga och en amerikansk flagga. Peka på en bok. Peka på en svensk flagga. Peka på en amerikansk flagga. Peka på en amerikansk flagga och en bok. Peka på en svensk flagga och en amerikansk flagga. Bra! Bra! Ni är duktiga. Ding, ding, ding. Ja, ni är duktiga. Vad är det? Vad är det? Är det en bok? Nej, det är inte en bok. Är det en flagga? Ja! Ja, det är en flagga. Är det en svensk flagga? Nej, det är inte en svensk flagga. Är det en amerikansk flagga? Ja, Det en amerikansk flagga. Det inte en svensk flagga. Det en amerikansk flagga. Det en annan amerikansk flagga. 2 amerikanska flaggor. 2 amerikanska flaggor. Det en stor flagga. Stor flagga. Det en liten flagga. En liten flagga. En stor flagga. Liten flagga. Stor flagga. Vad betyder liten? Little. Bra. Du duktiga. Vad betyder stor? Big or large. Liten. Stor. En liten amerikansk flagga. En stor amerikansk flagga. Peka på en liten flagga. Peka på en stor flagga. Peka på en liten flagga och en stor flagga. Okej, en stor amerikansk flagga. En liten amerikansk flagga. En liten svensk flagga. En bok. Okej, peka på en bok. Peka på en liten amerikansk flagga. Peka på en stor amerikansk flagga. Peka på en liten svensk flagga. Peka på en stor amerikansk flagga. Peka på en liten amerikansk flagga och en bok. Peka på en liten svensk flagga och en bok. Peka på en stor amerikansk flagga och en bok. Peka på en stor amerikansk flagga och en liten svensk flagga. Bra! 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 Ni är duktiga. Ding, ding, ding. Ni är duktiga. En liten amerikansk flagga. En stor amerikansk flagga. En liten svensk flagga. Vad är det? Är det en flagga? Ja eller nej? Är det en flagga? Ja! Ja, det är en annan flagga. Ja, det är en flagga. Är det en amerikansk flagga eller en svensk flagga? Ja, det är en svensk flagga. Det är en svensk flagga. Är det en liten flagga eller en stor flagga? Nej. Det är inte en stor svensk flagga. Det är en liten svensk flagga. Det är en liten svensk flagga. Det är en mycket liten svensk flagga. Är det en mycket liten svensk flagga? Ja. Vad betyder mycket? Mycket liten. Mycket liten. Liten? Very. Ja, ding, 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 ding. Du är duktig. Du är duktig idag. Du är duktig idag. Du är duktig idag. Vad betyder du? You är duktig, smart, idag, today. Maybe every day, but particularly today. Du är duktig idag. Du är duktig idag. Ja, very, mycket. Det är en mycket liten svensk flagga. En mycket liten svensk flagga. Är det en mycket liten svensk flagga? Ja, det är en mycket liten svensk flagga. Är det en mycket liten svensk bok? Nej, det är inte en mycket liten svensk bok. Är det en mycket liten svensk flagga eller en mycket liten svensk bok? Flagga eller en bok? Flagga. Är det en mycket liten svensk flagga eller bok? Flagga. Det är en mycket liten svensk flagga. Är det en mycket liten amerikansk flagga? Är det en stor svensk flagga? Stor. Peka på en stor amerikansk flagga. Stor. Det inte en stor svensk flagga. Det en mycket liten svensk flagga. Peka på en svensk bok. Peka på en liten svensk flagga. Peka på en liten amerikansk flagga. Peka på en stor amerikansk flagga. Peka på en mycket liten svensk flagga. Peka på en liten svensk flagga och en mycket liten svensk flagga. Bra! Peka på en stor amerikansk flagga och en bok. Peka på en liten amerikansk flagga och en mycket liten svensk flagga. Peka på en liten amerikansk flagga och en liten svensk flagga. Bra! Bra! Vad är det? Ingenting! Ingenting! There's nothing in here. Ingenting. Det är ingenting. Okej, klass. Klass. Vad? Vad är det? Vad är det? Ja. Det är en flagga. Det är en liten flagga. Det är en amerikansk flagga. Det är en liten amerikansk flagga. Bra! Ni är duktiga. Ding, ding, ding. Vad är det? Ja. You're all right. Det är en flagga. Det är en liten flagga. Det är en svensk flagga. Det är en liten svensk flagga, ja? Ja, det är. Vad är det? Ja. Du är duktig idag. Det är en stor amerikansk flagga. Det är en flagga. Det är en amerikansk flagga. Det är en stor amerikansk flagga. Det är en stor flagga. Ja? Stor. Klass. Vad är det? Ja, är det en flagga eller en bok? Flagga, ja, det är en flagga. Är det en amerikansk flagga eller en svensk flagga? Ja, det är en svensk flagga. Är det en mycket stor svensk flagga eller en mycket liten svensk flagga? Ja, det är en mycket liten svensk flagga. Klass, vad är det? Det är en mycket liten svensk flagga. Bra! I hope you had some fun with your new language. I sure had fun teaching you. The strategy that was used here, at the very beginning of the activity, my students had only produced 2 words in Swedish, ja and nej. By the end of the activity, in a classroom that would have been a choral response, so you would have had the support of all the other students all around of you. You would have had the guidance of me speaking the language along with you. I slowed it down just a little bit, but it still was at a natural pace. Sometimes I even helped you know where the one word began and another word ended by showing you, like, follow the bouncing ball. I did some formative assessments all along the way. Every time I added something, and then I asked you some questions, and then I stood aside and had you point to different things. That was a formative assessment. In the classroom, I was watching to see that you had a quick response, a confident response, and then I knew it was ready to add another piece of language that we would practice. At the end, I invited you to start speaking your new language. Notice that whatever answer was coming out was a correct answer, and that I praised you. If you said flagga, liten flagga, svensk flagga, everybody was correct. That's the way comprehensible input naturally differentiates students in the classroom. Wherever they're at is a good spot, and I praise them for it. This question ladder strategy, I've got a picture up here of my friend Bertie Siegel Cook, who first worked with James Asher as he developed TPR and worked with the classroom applications. She created what she calls the different levels of questioning, or used a question ladder. There were different types of questions. This strategy, similar to that, if you're familiar with the circling strategy used in TPRS, the question ladder also uses the different levels of questions. What ones were the easiest for you to answer? Probably the yes/no questions. What questions were the most difficult ones for you to answer? Well, the what is this that we built up to at the end. Even with that question, what is this, there's various levels of complexity there. If the answer is to the question is just book, that's a lot easier than if the answer to the question is en mycket liten svensk flagga. What's going on for the teacher from that? You just experienced the question ladder from a student perspective. What is it like from this side of the teacher desk? That's where in your packet, find this graphic there. Here we've got the question ladder where the easiest for you to answer questions are towards the lower rungs, and as you move up the ladder, it's a little bit more challenging for you as a student to answer those questions. These little phrases that I have in the side, this is what's going on in my teacher head while I'm doing that strategy. So I invite you now to pause the video and then just for yourself quietly read these little markers here. And basically what it's telling us that if I ask a yes/no question and I get that good, strong response from students, then I can take it up a notch. If I ask a yes/no question and I get kind of a hesitant response, or not everybody in the group is responding, then I'm gonna take it down a notch. And at the end, when I asked the most difficult question, what is this? And you had to say that it was a very little Swedish flag. The answer that I typically get when I get to that complex question is flagga, liten, svensk, mycket liten, and people, it's too hard for you at that point. So then what I did, and if you want to rewind the video and watch that part again later on, notice how I brought you down to the very beginning of the ladder, and I gradually worked your way up till that at the end everybody could say together, along with my guidance, det är en mycket liten svensk flagga. In this next video, I'll be explaining to a group at a workshop why the teaching of culture and the teaching of language are so important to me personally, and how it has really changed the progression that I've taken through most of my career to integrate a stronger and stronger cultural content in all of my classes and all the levels. This diagram shows my philosophy. In the classroom, of course, we're working towards target language proficiency. In my classroom, it's just as important that we work with target cultural knowledge. And this is where I get so excited about comprehensible input, because when I'm in the target language and the students are understanding what's going on in the target language, that's a key that unlocks the door to talk about absolutely any content that's interesting to talk about, any content that I think is important to learn about. And so it has really enriched the content in my classroom. CI makes both of these possible, target language proficiency and target cultural knowledge. Let's watch the explanation that I gave the group. So there's an aspect of language teaching that has become more and more important to me over the years. Not only do our students tell the world language learner story, where I took so many years of a language and I can't say anything, there's also what I call the world knowledge story. When Jay Leno used to take the microphone out on the street and ask people everyday common knowledge questions, and people would have a ridiculously low level of knowledge. And I'd laugh. I mean, that's a hoot. But it would also bother me as a teacher. As a teacher, I think, where are we? Where are we as a country that there's so many people who have such a low level of just knowledge of the world? In my language classes, I was teaching my seniors in high school. I was teaching a lesson on Pablo Picasso and the Spanish Civil War. So I was going to start out the lesson with gathering some background knowledge, asking my students who had been taking Spanish since middle school, and this was in an affluent suburban district, students who have had fine educational system and many other opportunities that are offered in life. So this group of students, I would ask them, what do you know about Spain? I was doing this in Spanish. ¿Qué sabemos de España? And I expected that I would fill the board with all kinds of information that they had learned about Spain over the years throughout their whole middle school and high school programming. And what do you think they knew?
Hardly anything.
Hardly anything. They knew hardly anything. They knew Trivial Pursuit. They knew things like Madrid is the capital, or Barcelona had the Olympics, or they might know a certain soccer player, or, oh, that's the ladies with the ruffly skirts and the little clacky things, whatever it is. You have flamenco, okay, we're counting it. Or they knew things like, oh, the running of the bulls, or they throw tomatoes at each other at some festival. They knew, things like that. That's what they knew about Spain. So that's what they knew about Spain. And then add that to their general knowledge of what was the world like prior to World War II. They had so little background knowledge, it was astonishing. Not surprising to us, but it really gave me pause to stop and think. As a world language teacher, I was teaching the language, was I also teaching about the world? So we know that reading comprehension and listening comprehension, a key factor for comprehension is background knowledge, especially when we get to the upper levels and the students are encountering some different pieces of literature, they're reading and hearing things that are more complex, they're maybe watching some films that have background of some really historical, complex events, some deep-seated cultural products, practices, and perspectives. And what our culture piece, our knowledge of the target culture, we've had these students in the classroom for years, and they were at a very base level. So I thought, what would happen? What difference would it make if, starting with the very early stages of language learning, if we started to intentionally build background knowledge of the target culture, as intentionally as we decide which nouns are taught, which verb tenses, when do we teach negation or indirect object pronouns. We're very intentional about that. What if we intentionally sequenced our curriculum into these concepts are taught in the first year, the second year, the third, so that what if I got my students in that senior course and they knew all kinds of things about Spain. They knew that there had been a Spanish Civil War. They'd heard about a person called Francisco Franco. They'd heard about Pablo Picasso. They'd heard about Spaniards needing to go into exile. They had heard about the oppression of the people who spoke languages other than Spanish during that time period, and how people can be culturally and personally oppressed using language. What if they knew some of these concepts going into that unit? It would create a whole different experience. So I want to show you today how we can start to change the world knowledge story of that. Well, I don't know. I think today American students many times are lost, and when I say they're lost, in time and space. They don't know where they are in time. They don't know what came before them and how it affects how we live today. And they're not recognizing the fact that decisions they make today are creating the future. They're lost in time. They're also lost in geographic space. So when they hear about a place in the world and they hear about an event, they don't know that that's the same type of event that's happening in many different places globally all over the world. Or they don't know that some events are happening in here and it's a neighboring country and a neighboring country. I believe that that's why a lot of people don't watch the news, because they don't understand the news. They don't know the places and they can't relate to the times. They're not being able to connect the dots with geographical and historical information. So that's part of my mission as a language teacher, to not only teach the target language, but also to teach the target culture in the target language, so that our students develop what I call world-savvy intelligence. So we hear about the multiple intelligences. We know about kinesthetic and auditory and personal, interpersonal and intrapersonal intelligence. I say there's another intelligence that we need to develop in our students. I call it the world-savvy intelligence. They need to have an understanding of how the world works. Who has power? Who gets power? How do you lose power? How do you regain power once you've lost power? They need to understand global economics. They need to understand how we are interconnected in our global world. And as a language person, in my classroom, we can offer, as language teachers, what no other content area offers. Not only building world-savvy knowledge of our students, but also the ability to communicate with people around the world in their own languages. Doing both, getting 2 for the price of 1. Target language proficiency and target cultural knowledge. How do we do that, and why should we do that? Well, if we can get 2 for the price of 1, why do we settle for 50%? Why only language when we can get language and culture at the same time? And the key piece that connects the 2 of these is CI, it's comprehensible input. When we're in the target language and students understand what's going on in class, that unlocks the door to be able to talk about any topic we want to. Whether it's a personal interest topic or it's an academic topic, we can talk about and learn about anything when we use comprehensible input. So this is a vision that I have. I'll start building background knowledge in level 1. Reinforce content already taught in the K-12 curriculum. Geography, the history, the arts, and the sciences, but from the diverse perspective that is taken with our target cultures. And thirdly, most importantly, we can teach the untaught curriculum. The topics that are not taught anywhere in the K-12 sequence. For example, U.S. connections, U.S. intervention into Central America during the 1980s. When is that taught anywhere else in the curriculum? That's a key piece to understanding the immigration, migration patterns that we're experiencing today. The general population does not have that background knowledge of how the United States connected with Central America at that point, and the history, actions of the past, created the current situation that we're in. And if I wasn't teaching that information in my Spanish language classroom, whose job did I think it was? There's a lot of curriculum that is untaught that we can be teaching. So now you know a little bit more about me. You know where I'm coming from as a teacher, a little bit more about my personal and professional philosophy about world language education. We're going to pull it all together now in the 4th video segment with an interactive mini lecture. This is a lesson demonstration where, again, I'll invite you to be a student in my classroom virtually. Answer the questions with ja or nay, or it might be an Eller question that you answer, or an information question. The goal of this lesson is twofold. Number 1 is to learn geographic information about the Nordic region, the names of the countries, the capitals, and then a little bit more specific about one region in Sweden. We're going to learn about Lapland. So one goal is to learn geographic information. The second goal of the lesson is to acquire the Swedish language. Language acquisition and content at the same time. You get 2 for the price of 1. And what I often say is, if you can get 2 for the price of the 1, why in the world do we settle for 50%? So I invite you now to join me in geography. Välkommen till geography. Have fun! God morgon, vi är här och jag är glad. God morgon till er. God morgon klass! Välkommen till geografi. Välkommen till geografi. Titta klass, titta. Det är Norden. Det är Norden. Norden. Det är Norden. Här är Norden. Norden har 5 länder. Norden har 5 länder. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 länder. Vad betyder länder? Countries, nations. 5 länder. Det finns 5 länder i Norden. There are 5 countries in the Nordic region. I Norden. Ja, Finland, Sverige, Norge, Danmark och Island. Vad betyder Finland? Finland! Ja! Vad betyder Sverige? Sweden. Vad betyder Norge? Norway. Vad betyder Danmark? Denmark. Vad betyder Island? Iceland. Ja. Det finns 5 länder i Norden. Titta. Det är Norge. Norge är ett land. Norway is a country. Norge är ett land. Titta. Sverige. Sverige är ett land. Sverige är ett land i Norden. Titta. Island. Intressanta. Island är ett land. Finland. Ja, det är Finland. Finland är ett land i Norden. Danmark. Det är Danmark. Danmark är ett land i Norden. Ja? Okej, klass. Det finns 5 länder i Norden. Det finns 5 länder i Norden. Vad betyder det finns? There are 5 länder i Norden. In the Nordic region. In the Nordic region. Det finns 5 länder i Norden. Finns det 5 länder i Norden? Ja eller nej? Ja, det finns 5 länder i Norden. Det finns 3 länder i Norden? Nej. Det finns 2 länder i Norden? Nej. Det finns 5 länder i Norden? Ja, det finns 5 länder i Norden. Det finns 5 länder i Norden. Klass. Hur många? Hur många länder finns det i Norden? 5. Ja, hur många länder? 5. Ja, det finns 5 länder i Norden. Det finns 5 länder i Norden. Okej. Klass, peka på, point 2. Peka på Finland. Peka på Danmark. Peka på Norge. Peka på Island. Peka på Island och Norge. Peka på Sverige och Finland. Peka på Finland och Danmark. Klass! Peka på Norge. Peka på Finland. Peka på Sverige. Peka på Danmark. Peka på Island. Peka på Island och Danmark. Peka på Norge och Sverige. Peka på Finland och Norge. Bra! Vad är det? Vad är det? Det är Stockholm. Stockholm är Sveriges Huvudstad. Vad betyder huvudstad? Capital. Du duktig idag. Ja? Huvudstad. Huvud, this is your huvud, head. Stad is city. So literally the word for capital is head city. Stockholm Sveriges huvudstad. Stockholm Sveriges huvudstad? Ja, Stockholm Sveriges huvudstad. Oslo Sveriges huvudstad? Nej, Oslo inte Sveriges huvudstad. Oslo Norges huvudstad. Oslo Norges huvudstad. Stockholm eller Oslo Sveriges huvudstad? Stockholm. Stockholm Sveriges huvudstad. Stockholm ligger i Sverige. Vad betyder ligger i? Is in, like it's located in. Stockholm ligger i Sverige. Du är duktig idag. Ding, 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 ding. Ja, Stockholm ligger i Sverige. Ligger Stockholm i Sverige? Ja eller nej? Ja, Stockholm ligger i Sverige. Stockholm ligger i Sverige. Oh, class. Var. Where? Var ligger Stockholm? I Sverige! Ding, 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 ding! Du är duktig idag! Stockholm ligger i Sverige. Var ligger Oslo? I Norge. Var ligger Helsinki? I Finland. Var ligger Copenhagen? I Danmark. Var ligger Stockholm? I Sverige. Ja. Fem huvudstäder. Reykjavik. Var ligger Reykjavik? I Island. Var ligger Copenhagen? I Denmark, or as they say in Sweden, they don't use the word Copenhagen, Köpenhamn, same place, okay? Köpenhamn Danmarks huvudstad. Var ligger Köpenhamn? I Danmark, var ligger Helsinki? I Finland, var ligger Stockholm? I Sverige, var ligger Oslo? I Norge. Bra. Titta, detta är Reykjavik. Här är Oslo. Intressanta. Här är Stockholm. Här är Helsinki. Helsinki. Detta är Köpenhamn. Intressanta. Var ligger Köpenhamn? I Danmark. Var ligger Helsinki? I Finland. Var ligger Oslo? I Norge. Var ligger Reykjavik? I Island. Var ligger Stockholm? I Sverige. Stockholm ligger i Sverige. Reykjavik ligger i Island. Helsinki ligger i Finland. Bra. Lappland. Var ligger Lappland? I Sverige. Detta är Lappland. Lappland ligger i Sverige. Titta. Lappland är ett landskap i Sverige. Lappland är ett landskap i Sverige. Vad betyder landskap? District, province, region. It's not like a state, but if it's a province or a region, an area. Lappland ligger i Sverige. Ligger Lappland i Sverige? Ja, Lappland ligger i Sverige. Var ligger Lappland?
I Norden.
Oh, i Sverige.
I Norden i Sverige, ja. Both right, ja. Sverige ligger i Norden. Lappland ligger i Sverige. Lappland ligger i Norden, ja. Du är duktig idag. Ja. Var ligger Lappland? Titta. Här är polcirkeln. Polcirkeln. Vad betyder polcirkeln? Arctic circle or polar circle. Lappland ligger i Norge. Lappland ligger i Sverige. Lappland ligger i Finland. Och Lappland ligger i Ryssland. Intressant. Var ligger Lappland? Lappland ligger i Norge. Och i Finland och i Ryssland. Var ligger Lappland? Lappland ligger i 4 länder. Hur många länder? 4. Ligger Lappland i 4 länder eller i 5 länder? 4 länder. Lappland ligger i 4 länder. Ja. I Norge och Sverige och Finland och i Ryssland. Vem? Vem är det? Du, ja, det är jag. Det är Jan i polcirkeln. Jan och Barb i polcirkeln. Det är Jan. Det var kallt i polcirkeln, ja. Det var kallt i Lappland. Vad betyder kallt? Just what it looks like and sounds like. Det var kallt i Lappland. Ja. Vad är det? Det är midnattssolen. Midnatt. Det är midnattssolen i Lappland. Vad betyder midnattssolen? Midnight sun. Midnight sun, land of the midnight sun. Det är midnattssolen i Lappland. Midnatt! Sol i midnatt. Intressant, ja. Okej. Det finns 4 länder i Lappland. 4 flaggor. Det är en flagga från Sverige. Det är en flagga från Finland. Det är en flagga från Norge. Bra. Och det är en flagga från Ryssland. Bra. Okay, so now I presented you with lots of information about Swedish geography. And now we're going to get comprehensible input through the written text. So at this point in time, after I give the instructions here, I'll invite you to pause the video and go into your PDF packet where you have a copy of the same reading that's showing on the screen. I'd like you to take that copy and read it, see what you can figure out. You'll be able to figure out all or almost all of it. What I want you to do is just say what it means. Now in this reading, sometimes you're going to find a term, a word, sometimes a phrase that you didn't encounter in the listening portion of the comprehensible input. That's okay. I've set it up so you're going to be pretty successful at guessing from context. And don't worry if you can't get it. If it doesn't come to you, you can just skip over it. Because when we come back together after you've had time to read, I'm going to show you and unlock the meaning of the entire reading for you. So at this time, stop the video, go to your packet, and read. Välkommen! Welcome back. So now I'm going to go through the reading with you. Now, in a real classroom situation, I would have just been walking around the room, allowing students to ask me questions. Sometimes I might point things out to them. I might show them some things that lead them to the answer. Or sometimes they might have just given me the whoosh, and I let them know what it means. Here in the virtual demonstration here, I'm just going to go through the reading and tell you what everything means. That way you can get those questions answered that are in your minds right now. So it says, lesson, Swedish geography. Sweden is located in the Nordic region. There are 5 countries that are located in the Nordic region: Iceland, Denmark, Norway, Finland, and Sweden. The next paragraph is about the capital city, Stockholm. Stockholm is a city in Sweden. Stockholm is Sweden's capital city. Many people live in Stockholm. Stockholm is a big city. Stockholm has many big hotels, wonderful restaurants, and interesting museums. The next paragraph is about Lapland. Lapland is located in Sweden, Norway, Finland, and Russia. Lapland is located in 4 countries. It's cold in Lapland because Lapland is located north of the polar circle. Sweden is called Land of the Midnight Sun because in June the sun shines for 24 hours. Wasn't that an interesting experience for you to guess from context? Some things were easier to guess, I imagine, and some things were more difficult. And as I said before you did the reading, maybe sometimes you even skipped over these things. Being able to look at a text and being able to predict whether guessing from context is even realistic for students at that point, for that particular word or phrase, or if you think it might be easy, or if you know that's going to be really difficult. This is great, insightful information for us as teachers, because now we're able to look at a text and we're able to make some predictions as to the successful probability for our students to understand and read with total comprehension. This gives me great information as a teacher because now it helps me to choose and be very selective and set priorities for these words. I better pre-teach them. These words we could learn with gestures. These words we could learn with some visuals. These words I could do some personalized question and answer beforehand. These words, this right here, boy, you've got to have some background knowledge. For example, if you were a person that didn't happen to know that teeny piece of information that Sweden is known as the land of the midnight sun, then that made this section much more difficult for you. So I might need to check that you know that Sweden is the land of the midnight sun. Or I need to do something, come over and maybe do it as a guided reading where we do it as a whole class, because I'm thinking not everybody in my class has that background information. This gives us insight for all of the texts that we use for our students. So that interactive mini lecture in geography taught in Swedish so you could learn geography and acquire Swedish language at the same time is a little appetizer in what I call content-based instruction and storytelling. It's a combination of content-based instruction and content-based storytelling. I use 4 steps for content-based instruction with storytelling, or I call it CBIS. The 4 steps are getting your students ready and set with a mindset and with the language ready to be successful in the lessons. Comprehensible input with listening, comprehensible input with reading, and then I include the output step. So I think output plays an important role in the whole process. We know that speaking and writing aren't part of language acquisition, but they are a very important piece in developing the fluency. Right now, I know you've got what I call Swiss cheese Swedish. You've got some Swedish. Every one of you have some Swedish in you. And it's full of holes, like Swiss cheese. So as I scaffold output activities to keep you at a comfort level, to help you be a risk taker, and just play with your new language. When you play with your new language in a low anxiety environment, you discover what are your holes in your Swiss cheese. And I discover that too for my class. And our goal is that as we move together, we form cheddar. Not only do we fill in the holes of our Swiss cheese, but we also deepen our world-savvy intelligence quotient. So here is a picture frame. Communication. When we base our language lessons on the language acquisition principles, the way the brain naturally acquires language, with a heavy focus on comprehensible input, students learn to communicate in the language. But what's missing here? That's just one of the C's. What I use is what I call the big picture curriculum, a bigger picture frame, where inside the picture frame, this is the content of the language classroom. What content, I mean, what are we talking about? What are we reading about, listening to, conversing about, writing about, reflecting on? On these cultural topics, when they're taught in the target language, you get 2 for the price of 1. I invite you to follow me on Facebook, Educator in Service, Janice Holter Kittok. You could also follow me on Twitter, @JanKittok. Here's my website, educatorinservice.com. That's where you can find information about how to book an on-site teacher workshop. Join me at a teacher retreat where we learn and have lots of mini demonstrations and time for you to practice and create some of your own materials. I also do consulting on content-based instruction, curriculum writing, and program development, especially with FLES programs, AP and IB, so that there's a sequence, an intentional sequence, being as intentional about the cultural sequence through all of our levels as we are about all of the language components that we design. Thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed this hour. I sure enjoyed making this video to be with you. So I just want you to remember that every time you go into the classroom, you're doing really important work. You're teaching students how to communicate with the world, and you can also be helping them develop world-savvy intelligence. That's what we need for making a better world. The work of a world language teacher is being a peacemaker every single day. So I wish all of you peace, love, joy, and harmony. Hey, Do. Thanks for joining me.